Imagine one day waking up only to realize that your body wasn't yours, to slowly come out of the grip of sleep, to find out you can't move, to hear your mother's voice yet be unable to speak or cry out for help, to realize you're paralyzed, trapped, and then something tells you to move to the left. Suddenly, you're out of bed, examining the room that you've spent your entire life living in. Every item a memory, but today you stare at each like it's the first time, because it is. But it's just not your body. It's Kris's, and they are our puppet. Deltarune is a surreal experience for those who know the truth. To see a normal morning of a teen named Kris going to school in as standard of an RPG opening as one could expect. With it not being till the closing moments of Chapter 1 that we realize that we weren't just playing another video game. We were playing a horror story where we are the monster and we just didn't realize. From our perspective, this was just another game, but to Kris, we've stolen their entire life. We determine where they go, what they say, how they interact with the world, forcing them to be a passenger in their own body as we decide for them to sate our own desires or just morbid curiosity. Kris is the vessel through which we interact with the game, but they have their own personality, their own goals, and with each new chapter of Deltarune we see as they try to work with us or against us. But they're just a pawn, and we are so much more. Okay, not to do the whisper voice the entire video, Kris as a character has always fascinated me. This idea of a playable character being conscious of their own possession, forced to act as we command, with the mental agony of this situation taking its toll even just under the kindest of playthroughs. As no matter how we would like to spin it, we control Kris, making our every action injustice as we are stripping them of their autonomy. I have been deep into Deltarune the last couple months, so to cleanse myself of this hyperfixation that just can't be sated with blasting covers of the soundtrack, I wanted to dive into the horrific reality that is Kris's situation, who they are really, and how everything we've learned about them might just be a lie.
Kris! Kris! That's right, you!
Deltarune, for those who don't know, was created by Toby Fox, his second game after the terrifying success of Undertale, a game famous for blending likable characters, iconic music, and emotionally destroying people by having actual permanent consequences to punish people who decide, like, I'm just gonna go on a murder spree and assume that'd be okay. Inspired by Earthbound, aka the game Ness is from, Undertale, for lack of a better word, is, well, a masterpiece, spawning a fan community that legit puts all others to shame, as if we just compare fan output, there is so many amazing fan works out there, so many fan fictions, so many animatics, so many stolen songs that you can't help but appreciate how wildly successful and how wildly passionate they are. So naturally, like any cult classic that happens to be wildly popular, this game getting a spiritual sequel in Deltarune scared the shit out of me, as after so many years of obsession bordering on worship, imagining a world where Deltarune was inferior to Undertale in any way filled me a dread that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. But then, the game came out, and it wasn't even close to Undertale's level, as it surpassed it. Deltarune is released in chapters, with each one improving upon the story, adding new layers to the gameplay, twists to the story, and characters who are so lovable you forget that they were in Undertale first. It's a game that begins like so many others do, with an idyllic town, kooky characters, before suddenly Kris and their bully, and soon-to-be friend Susie, are thrown into another world. A dark world, where they meet friends, enemies, and they are told that they are the prophesized heroes meant to save everyone. But this standard adventure is tainted by the reveal at the end of Chapter 1. That we haven't been playing as Kris. We watch as they throw themselves out of bed and drag their body to the center of the room, as if to look at us dead in the eye, proceeding to tear out their own heart. Except it's not their heart, it's ours. This soul that we've been using as an icon to make choices, that's what we've been controlling, and through it, Kris. Our adventure was their nightmare, and everything finally started to make sense. At the beginning of the game, we were told to make our own character, to give our name and one for our creation, only for it to be erased. We would be Kris, And unlike Undertale, where choices mattered, here we were told they wouldn't. And that was a very interesting half-truth, as while they may not matter to us, they meant everything to Kris. The game tells us that no one can choose who they are in this world, meaning we had to take someone else as a vessel to participate in the story with. And I love this. It creates a story within a story that forces players to consider how they interact with the game. We, the players, are essentially eldritch gods who needed a host, creating this sense that the world of Deltarune truly existed before we turned on the game, that all these characters had their own relationships and histories, making it impossible for us to introduce our own self-inserts. We may be here to save the world, but we are still intruders in it. With our ability to buy into the lie that we aren't, speaks the empty existence that is Kris. Kris, before us, was alone, the only human in town. While not ostracized, they grew up with that sense of being different. Old photos of them show that they used to wear horns, trying to look like a monster, and to fit in better with their adopted family, the Dreamers. But as they grew up, that family would just fall apart. Asgore, the patriarch of the family, has fallen into the same trap as his Undertale counterparts, becoming a bum in every universe, having committed some mistake that led to the collapse of his marriage. His wife Toriel divorced him, taking the house and the custody of their two kids, Kris and Asriel. Asriel, though, Kris's one true friend, he's gone. He's off to college, leaving Kris all alone. The Kris we meet at the start of the story at first seems like just an empty vessel, a fact made clear by their room, one that they shared with their brother. Asriel's side is filled to the brim with trophies, awards, and other trinkets, proving that they did in fact have a life. Meanwhile, Kris, there's nothing. Their shelves are empty, not a poster or item to be seen, with this barrenness removing any sense of individuality that Kris might have, or what you might assume about them, as the only thing that's really here, besides the bed, is a bird cage, one that they would use to stuff the soul into. And as we discover, the cage is all Kris was meant to be in this story. But then something changed. That, though, is a theory for later. The Kris we meet at the start of the story is one that we mostly get to totally control. There's very few hints of them having free will or having a personality besides us. And besides the idea that Kris might be playing along for their own reasons, it's still a very easy illusion to pull off. As despite us being able to do whatever we want, nobody really notices the difference in Kris. They were once known for causing trouble, for pulling pranks, but they were also known for being very quiet, to mumble when they speak, with all evidence pointing to the fact that this quiet demeanor, while not unnatural for Kris, was something that was only enhanced by their parents' divorce. Life was changing rapidly, so they shut down and grew isolated, with this leading them to grow even further apart from everyone that could possibly help them. A part of Kris has always felt like an outcast. They're the only human in town, they're the only human in their family, but they never felt alone till now. Their family is broken apart, their brother is gone, leaving Kris with nothing, just going through the motions with only hints of the kid who used to act out. Kris is an apathetic teenager. They don't know how to handle the situation they're in, and they are feeling powerless, with the current evidence suggesting that they've always fluctuated between being a prankster who would just do dumb things to get a rise out of people, and being a very closed-off person. This is what made it so easy for us to take control, and for no one to really notice. With the only love that was in their life that wasn't their family, was their joy in playing the piano. They used to go to the hospital for hours and play, or heading over to their almost friend, but it's a very weird situation with Noelle in the holidays, where they would go to their house to play, but would refuse to play in front of Noelle herself. Kris has lived a mostly normal, quiet existence, dealing with sad but very real issues at home, with them pulling themselves inward and not expressing their feelings, making it so easy and so perfect to take control of them. No one really notices the change. Kris's quiet, mumbly voice being replaced with something clearer, more direct. Kris's partner Susie only recently became their friend, so they wouldn't notice, but Toriel, their classmates, the rest of them are none the wiser that Kris has been replaced. And I wonder if that hurts, to know that the others would so easily believe the thing that's controlling them, that isn't even trying to hide. No one besides Noelle senses that something is amiss. Kris's early presentation is a wonderful fusion of game mechanics and world building, empowering us the player while ripping control away from Kris. Even Kris's gender feels like it's designed to set us up to make assumptions. That yes, they are non-binary in answer to they, them, which most of the game will refer to them as. But people won't clock that. They'll just assume that, oh, we're supposed to insert our own gender over them, when no, that's not the case. They are not us, making that moment where they tear the soul out of their body all the more shocking, as we were hit by the realization that while we may be the player, this is not us, and Kris is not our friend.
I never liked you, get lost.
Now, despite everything, Kris does have some degree of control over our actions. We may call the shots, but when it comes to interacting with the world, they do have some ways to stop us from doing something. We're limited to simple commands so they can do what's said, but in a way that prevents us from getting what we want. Like entering Asriel's room, only for Kris to close their eyes so we don't see anything. Looking at an article about how Asgore got fired, but not reading all of it. Looking at a door that someone could possibly be hiding behind, but only jiggling the lock instead of actually opening it. We control Kris, but it's limited by the mechanics of the game, with them doing their best to undercut us when they have to. They may attack on command, but they don't have to put their all into it, something we see in fights against bosses like Tenna and the Knight. They are not completely powerless to us. But something else is going on, as one phone call reveals that Kris is working for someone else. We don't know who this is. The Roaring Knight is the most likely candidate, or someone who is working with them, both of whom seem to be gunning for Armageddon. But in any case, Kris is working with someone, creating dark worlds to further their goals, endangering their mother, and making a deal with Tenna to keep us busy. For all the horrible things that have happened to them, Kris is walking with us to some unseen destination. They're trying to achieve some goal, with this forcing them to keep putting the soul back in, as they're weak without it. They need it to some degree, just like we need them. And neither of us can turn back, even as things get weird. Look, I don't hate the name Weird Route, but my god does it not hit the same as Snowgrave. But simply put, within Deltarune, there are many ways to play the game, with very few of the choices you make changing things in obvious and immediate ways. How many creatures you beat or befriend, who cares? That's basically a number, and like it'll open some doors in your home base. Who you say you want to go to the festival with, but these things, well, they'll probably have an effect later, but at the moment, nothing about the game has significantly changed for most of your choices. And nothing has changed to the extent that the Weird Route does, and it's all our fault. The changes begin in Chapter 2, where Susie and Kris fall into another dark world, only this time they're joined by Birdly, who is just Falco's otaku son, and Noelle, the closest thing Kris originally had to a friend, and the focal point of an obsession that makes my skin crawl. As we didn't have to do any of this. We didn't have to tell Noelle what to do, to always use her ice attacks to freeze enemies, killing them rather than the traditional form of combat where they just get to run away. It's almost like a glitch in the game, an oversight that was left in as the dark implications were too tempting for a curious mind not to follow. A string best left unpulled, but we pull it anyway, as we can always just load another save and pretend none of it ever happened. So like fools, we walk down that icy road, not driven by any morbid sense of completionism, but out of nothing but curiosity of how far Toby Fox was willing to let us go, as after all, none of this is real. We can do whatever we want. Beginning this hidden route relies almost purely on our curiosity, as we have no reason to do any of this. There's no in-game incentives to freeze every monster we come across, no need to follow the advice of a man hiding in a dumpster. They say that, oh, Noelle's getting stronger, but we have no idea what that means. We didn't have to tell Noelle to freeze a salesman to steal a ring we couldn't afford, pushing her to do it again and again, pressuring her into following our orders, trusting Kris that everything we do is to make them stronger, that it'll all work out, that she didn't need to worry about what she did, she only needed to listen. She only needed to proceed. Then we make Noelle do something that she can't take back. Using Noelle's powers and a ring we bought from a thirst trap, Noelle unlocked an ability known as Snowgrave, except she doesn't know it. We get to see all of her attacks, so we can see it just waiting there to be used, so we command her again and again to use it till she does, wiping out our enemies till suddenly her old friend Birdly is here. You know, little annoying Birdly, an arrogant bird who's built his entire identity around Noelle's hard work. He comes all concerned that we're the bad guy, that we're doing something to Noelle, so he tries to fight us for her. And after everything we've done to get to this point, it's obvious what the game wanted us to do. When we escape this dark world at the end of the chapter, Birdly doesn't wake up. he's unconscious, and by nighttime he's in the hospital, still cold to the touch. But what about Noelle? Our sweet, innocent Noelle. Well, she thought this was all a dream, believing Susie's lie as that was just the easiest way to keep on going, to not think anything that she did actually happened. But we don't actually get to see that scene. In the normal route, we do get to see Noelle and Susie talking, but here, where things got weird, Kris refuses to close their eyes. They refuse to imagine what might be happening in the other room. When Rouse asks, like, oh, what do you think is happening? Kris gives no response, as they know what this game is like. They know what happens when they imagine, and they refuse to let us get any closer than we already have. They won't let us see our Noelle. Deltarune has a horror concept at the heart of its gameplay, that we get to control Kris to do with them as we will, but usually our interests align just enough that we don't dive into any true horror moments. Very rarely are we forcing Kris to do something where they are fighting back. We can do things that they dislike, but most of those are easy mistakes to make. But here though, it's different. We're using Kris to brainwash Noelle, luring her in with their friend, telling them what to say, using them as a speaker to give commands. We get to hear her thoughts, tell Noelle that she's not a friend, she's something else, and she'll do what we say. Meanwhile, Kris is powerless to stop us. This route shows the true gravity of the situation, turning Kris from a semi-antagonist working for unknown reasons to a protector trying to stop us from using Noelle, going out into the night trying to minimize all the damage that we've done, bringing Berdly to the hospital, reassuring Noelle that yes, it was all a dream, that they were just acting weird as a prank, and that it would all be okay, when we know that it won't. As come on, we spent $25. We might as well get our money's worth. Everything that could go wrong for Kris here does. They can hinder us, but they can't stop us from doing what happens next. And what makes this so horrific is that this is all our choice, and we are given so many off-ramps, chances to not keep going forward, but we ignore them, making us feel responsible for our own actions in a way that eclipses even the genocide route in Undertale, as there, it kinda was just work. We kill everything, and that's that. Sans is an amazing boss, but it's all a challenge. We have to work for it. But there's no real work here. We just have to figure out how, and then proceed. It's a statement on obsession, on player curiosity to do the weirdest things just to see how it'll affect the game. We followed Spamton just to get the chance to beat a secret boss, but Kris doesn't know that. All they know is that they're following our instructions in the directions of a madman who lives in trash. They're forced to go down into a dark basement all alone because we want to, with them then getting greeted by the visual of a puppet trapped in its strings. And that's probably painful for Kris in a way little else is, as it's them. They are our puppets, and while they can rip us out, Kris seemingly can't be separate from us for long, as their body becomes weak, gaining a zombie-like gait, and despite that, they know what we're capable of. They've seen how we put Berdly in a coma, how for some reason we're obsessed with Noelle, but despite all the dangers, they let us back in. And I wonder deep down how much Kris blames themselves, how much they wish to just lock us in that cage and throw away the key. In the normal route, you can almost say that, oh, we're kind of growing closer even though we're antagonists fighting each other, but we share the same friends, and that's a bond that's hard to shake. But in this route, you know they hate us, as they have every reason to.
Kris?
Their life is falling apart, the end of the world is coming, they promise someone to help the knight, putting their own mother at risk to be used as bait, but still, they keep going forward, just like us. As I think Kris asks for this. They asked for us.
So cry if you want, cause you had a chance to walk away. Instead, you're the fool who let me in.
Now this is conjecture on my part, but there's something about the timeline of Deltarune that doesn't make sense. Kris has been able to go off and do their own thing without us. Even as early as chapter 1, they slashed Toriel's tires, they've been creating dark worlds, but at no point do they ever have enough time to make a deal with someone. Maybe on the first night, but everything Kris does doesn't make them feel like a person who is surprised by what's happening. They knew how to get us out of their body. When they were free, Kris doesn't tell everyone or look for help. They just have a midnight snack, a little bit of stress eating overheating after being taken on a test drive. Being confronted by a tutorial character that looks just like your brother will probably do that to you. And by the time morning comes, they put us right back. The voice on the phone said Kris needs the soul. Whatever they're planning, it involves us, the players. My personal theory is that just as Susie represents the concept of freedom, writing one's own fate, the knight represents control and obeying destiny, slaying Tenna as that's just how things are supposed to go. They want the roaring to happen because it's supposed to, with Kris aiding them in all of it. The why is still unknown. There are as many fan theories as there are characters with horns, with some suggesting that the knight is Noelle's missing sister Des, or maybe it's their mother Carol. Maybe this is just Kris trying to turn back the clock to reunite their family and return to the way things used to be. Maybe it's just out of fear of growing up, we don't know. But what is clear is that Kris is working with us as much as they are against us, meaning they let us take control of their body, pilot around their home, talk to their friends, and even after what we do to Noelle, they still let us take back control.
They heard. There's no way they heard my thoughts.
I heard.
Kris had forced us out of their body, fighting to keep us from learning the code to the shelter, with the clues leading us to Noelle's home, where if you commit to the weird route, Noelle wants to talk, pulling a freed Kris to the side and trying to discuss what happened the night before. How Kris had just shown up to her house saying everything was going to be okay and that everything they had done was just a prank, secretly taking back the thorn ring, but the second she asks us a question, we get to enter the room. The game allows us to choose what to say next, so the soul that was trapped outside is suddenly in, and we get to possess Kris, where we get to reveal that we're not them, shattering the illusion that everything she did wasn't a dream. We used Noelle to kill people. We put the ring back on her finger and shattering any hope of innocence that she had left, with us using Kris to do all of it. And they still let us back in. Kris doesn't want any of this. They hate us for it, hurting themselves just to stomp us to what should be our death, but we end up being given control again. Kris knows Noelle isn't safe, but whatever they are trying to achieve, maybe they think it's worth the risk. It makes us wonder just how much real choice did they ever have. We've seen them in the normal game, how they grow to care about Susie and Rousey, protecting their brother's doppelganger, keeping us from saying cruel things just because. They grow closer to them, they care about them, and are seemingly torn between trying to fight fate and serving someone who wishes to follow it. Throughout Deltarune, the idea of freedom is a recurring theme. It's a musical motif that you can hear in 3 out of the 4 secret bosses, while also being a major theme in their personality and drive. Jevil realized that nothing they do matters, finding freedom in chaos and the unreality of the world. Spamton was a puppet who spent his entire life just giving away control in the name of achieving success, desperately wanting to take it back, only to find out that he was still confined. Gerson tried to teach us to embrace the journey and trying to chart our own destiny, a living memory of a man long since passed, and still trying to share his wisdom one final time. Each one leaves their mark on Kris, Spamton most of all, as they're just a horrible reminder of what they really are. Meanwhile, Susie gets hyped up about changing fate, which Kris wants to believe in, but right now they can't even save themselves. The prophecy calls them a cage, maybe not even a person, they're just the parts. So it really makes me wonder why they would willingly submit to this, to let us take control, as it's just such an insane idea to imagine anyone agreeing to this. And it's now just sad to see Kris trapped between 2 stories that demand that they surrender who they are. I mean, it's no wonder Kris can't sleep at night besides, you know.
Don't worry, Kris. You don't have to call me daddy. Yet.
However, worse than Spamton, worse than Jevil, worse than the Yo Mama joke Sans will crack in Chapter 5, the worst secret experience that Kris has to go through for me is the sword route. Trapped in the TV dark world, Kris is forced to play a bunch of games. If they do well, they get access to the S-Class, where, in the very back, there's another game. You play a lot of them, but this one, it's the original. It resembles the old Legend of Zelda games. It's nothing special at first. You play through it, you explore, wander around, solve puzzles, avoid monsters, but then you get a sword, and lacking direction, you decide to do what you think the game wants. What you did in Undertale, wiping out all the monsters, growing stronger with each kill, till we're completely alone and discover a key. Journeying into a dungeon where we're greeted by a familiar sight. As we're followed by an ice mage, we use them to freeze our enemies, commanding them to attack again and again till they're all used up, vanishing from the game, but we keep going. Eventually, we get another key, this time to the shelter, and the game thanks Kris, not us, for telling them that they were used up. Later, we get the chance to finish the route to go back to the game. We're joined by in-game representations of our friends, but they just follow us around, and we want to proceed. So with little else to do, we cut them down, Kris looking away each time delving into the level we slay an NPC of Tenna, the man Kris made a deal with to stall us, outing their secret arrangement that everything in this chapter has been a distraction, but that's the main story, and we're just trying to see where all this goes, even as Kris begins to fight us with everything they have, trying to keep us from seeing into the bunker, but it's not enough. We're too strong. We go inside where we face a nightmare. It taunts Kris, telling them that they must be enjoying this, that our search for the shadow crystals, it doesn't really matter. A small part of us must be enjoying this, enjoy everything that we did yesterday, that Kris can just say that it wasn't them, that they're powerless to stop it, that they had to do it, so a small part of them might as well enjoy it. And when we finally slay the boss, when our battle is concluded, the prize is put in a place that we can't reach. So we just do what we've been doing this entire time and keep following the path till it leaves the game and nearly slashes Kris before leaving. We regain control of Kris at this point and then make them go into the game to take our prize, only for Susie to arrive, and Kris tries to pretend that nothing is wrong. But then the little Kris comes back and tries to stab her, only just barely missing as Kris took back control to pull her away, with Susie being none the wiser. This is Kris's life. They are seeing the world from our perspective, not as some eldritch god, but as a video game, where we can do whatever we want and no one would know. Whatever curiosity they might have had about what's going on, it has to be broken by the almost dull reality of someone just playing a game. Even if Kris doesn't know that they're just a character in a video game, the idea that this is all they are to us, it's chilling. Every part of Kris's life has rendered them a passenger in their own story. They had to watch their parents argue and split apart. They had to follow someone else's orders. They had to obey us. They've had small moments of resistance, but they can't stop anything, only slow it down. Which is why I find them at the end of chapter 4 so fascinating, as they are split between loyalties to try and fight with Susie or to keep working against her. Meanwhile, the weird route only has Kris hurt, hanging on a phone with Carol as they say Noelle is so excited to see us again. We are only halfway through the story of Deltarune, but Kris already feels like they're at a breaking point. Fans seem to be at theirs, as the weird route up until now, it's been bad, but it also feels like setup for a much darker outcome. The idea of whether or not any of this matters is still up in the air. Deltarune is said to only have one real ending, but the context behind it could radically change. But it's Kris that fascinates me the most. This silent figure trapped in all of it, and if we were to treat this game as if the meta story was real, then there is no ethical way to play it. No matter what we do, it would be a violation of Kris's will. We could play it to align with all of their preferences as we can manage, say all the things we think they would say, but none of it matters, as we are still making the choices for them. It's why my favorite part of chapter 4 is Kris on the piano, as for the first time, they're allowed to be themselves in front of their friends. They don't want to play for us or help us proceed, but in that moment, they let go to embrace something that is entirely their own, and to be seen for who they are, not just who we make them.